Hello. Under the slogan Young and Fun Philosophy, this is SageSync, which brings the thoughts of philosophers into today's life and delivers them as a story of empathy. Today, we're plunging into the world of solitude. Now, our everyday experience of being alone, well, it can sometimes feel like, loneliness, isolation. But it's fascinating that so many thinkers have actually seen this state, not just as something negative, but as this really powerful space for self-discovery, for inner strength.
Absolutely. Yeah, the common view often paints it pretty negatively, like it's a failure to connect or something. But when you look at philosophers like Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, and Baltasar Gracián, who we're discussing today, you get a much richer picture,
Yeah.
really compelling one. Each of them, from their own unique angle, saw real, profound value in being alone.
Exactly. And that's our mission for this deep dive, really, to get to grips with what solitude meant to them. And crucially, how can their ideas maybe offer us some wisdom for navigating our own, often pretty complicated modern lives? So let's start with Arthur Schopenhauer. He was really interested in how solitude could lead to inner peace.
Right. Schopenhauer's core idea was that, well, a lot of our human turmoil comes from the external world constantly bombarding us, and this relentless chase after desires. He argued that real peace, true happiness, isn't found in, piling up possessions or ticking off desires. It's just not sustainable.
Okay, let's unpack that a little. So Schopenhauer thought the key wasn't getting more, but letting go,
Mm,
reducing desires, reducing reliance on the outside world.
precisely. Less craving, less dependence on external validation or things. That was the path to inner tranquility, as he saw it.
That feels very relevant today with everything constantly vying for our attention. How practically did he suggest we do that? Reduce those desires.
Well, he didn't exactly lay out a five-step plan. But his whole philosophy points towards a conscious turning inward. He really admired figures like Diogenes the Cynic, lived with almost nothing.
Right, the guy with the barrel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because that simplicity showed detachment. If you have less, well, there's less for fate to take away.
Mm.
Less external stuff controlling your inner state. It's about building up that self-sufficient mindset, focusing on your internal world, your thoughts, your peace, rather than what's happening outside.
That really does resonate with modern ideas like minimalism, doesn't it? Creating mental space by having less physical clutter. Now, you also mentioned Schopenhauer talked about our unique human self-awareness. How does that fit in with solitude?
Ah, yes. This is fascinating. He pointed out that we humans, unlike, say, animals, we marvel at our own existence. We reflect on it. And this capacity, this self-awareness, it actually creates a kind of need for contemplation,
Yeah.
for exploring our inner selves. Solitude, then, by cutting out the external noise, provides the essential quiet time for this really crucial internal activity.
So it's not just escaping noise, it's actively creating space to engage with ourselves, with our thoughts. That Schopenhauer saw this inner world as pretty dynamic, right? Even when we're alone.
Oh, absolutely. He had this really interesting idea that our thoughts, even abstract ones, kind of act like individual entities inside us. They debate, they support, they oppose each other. It's like an internal dialogue constantly happening.
Like an internal committee meeting?
Sort of. Think about when you encounter a new idea. There's often that internal resistance or maybe acceptance, kind of wrestling with it. That's
Okay.
the inner life he's talking about, and solitude lets that happen undisturbed.
That's a great way to put it, an undisturbed brainstorming session in your own head. So, summing up Schopenhauer then, solitude isn't fear, it's opportunity.
Exactly. A deliberate escape from external chaos, a way to quiet desires, find inner peace, and really enrich your inner life through that deep self-dialogue. And in our world today, just saturated with information, social media, constant interaction, his perspective feels like a really powerful reminder. Solitude as genuine rest, genuine growth.
Okay, that, Schopenhauer's solitude for inner peace. Now, let's shift gears a bit to Friedrich Nietzsche. His take seems, well, maybe a bit more intense.
Yes, definitely more intense. Nietzsche knew loneliness firsthand, felt deeply disappointed by friends sometimes. He saw solitude as potentially necessary, but also potentially quite painful. He had this idea that great individuals, those forging new paths, might actually be destined for a certain amount of solitude.
So, not necessarily a cozy refuge, but maybe more like a trial by fire. You mentioned he created Zarathustra as an ideal friend. Tell us about that.
Right. It's fascinating how he turned his own intellectual isolation into creativity. Feeling misunderstood, perhaps, he basically created Zarathustra, this figure who embodied the kind of challenging, profound companion he wanted. So in a way, his solitude wasn't just empty. It became the fertile ground where his radical ideas, his new values could grow, personified in Zarathustra.
Wow, turning loneliness into a creative catalyst. But Zarathustra didn't just stay as an imaginary friend, did he? He actually tells his real followers to leave him. That sounds counterintuitive.
It does seem paradoxical at first glance, yeah. But it really highlights Nietzsche's absolute commitment to independent thinking. When Zarathustra says, "Go away from me and beware of Zarathustra, be ashamed of him." It's not about rejecting people, it's about demanding intellectual autonomy. For Nietzsche, a real thinker must have the freedom to disagree, even with mentors, even with friends. They need to be free from groupthink. Solitude protects that freedom.
Ah, I see. So solitude acts as a kind of shield against conformity. It gives you the space to develop your own thoughts, even if they're unpopular. And Nietzsche seemed to really romanticize solitude in nature, right? The mountains.
Oh, absolutely. He uses this powerful imagery, Zarathustra breathing the free air of the heights, far from the smell of the marketplace, of ordinary human concerns. It connects physical isolation with this sense of spiritual liberation. Zarathustra sitting alone, drafting new tables of values. It pictures solitude as this sacred, necessary time for challenging the old ways and creating something entirely new, preparing for big things.
Like the physical height mirrors a kind of intellectual or spiritual height. And he had a specific idea of spiritual freedom, didn't he? What did that involve?
He did. And it wasn't just freedom from things. For Nietzsche, spiritual freedom meant intense self-discipline, ruthless honesty with oneself, courage, and the absolute will to say no, even when it's dangerous. This kind of freedom, he thought, really emerges from the lonely courage of walking your own path, completely independent of what others think or approve of.
That sounds incredibly demanding, almost like a self-imposed exile for the sake of true thinking. And what about his writing style? Apparently he wrote carefully so not everyone could easily understand.
That's right. He deliberately used a careful style. It wasn't just being obscure for the sake of it. It was a conscious choice of intellectual solitude. He wanted his ideas, which were complex and challenging, to reach those few individuals who would genuinely grapple with them, who would understand the nuances, not just jump on some superficial bandwagon.
Okay, so for Nietzsche, solitude isn't just about being alone. It's this necessary, maybe tough condition for achieving real spiritual freedom, for questioning everything, and for ultimately creating your own values. A very different feel from Schopenhauer's piece.
Very different. And in a world that pushes so hard for conformity, for fitting in, for likes and validation, Nietzsche's view is, well, it's a powerful call to use solitude to find your unique value, to transcend, the everyday pressures.
A powerful call indeed. Right, let's move to our third philosopher, Baltasar Gracián. His focus seems a bit more worldly, coming from his book, The Art of Worldly Wisdom.
Yes, Gracián brings a different flavor, definitely focused on practical wisdom and self-reliance cultivated through solitude, but perhaps applied more directly to navigating the world. His core idea, a wise person is content with themselves. He really stresses becoming your own friend, building that strong inner core so you can live well alone and depend mainly on yourself.
Become your own friend. I like that. It shifts the focus from needing others to finding completeness inside. But he asks that question, doesn't he? Well, why need others if your own taste is supreme? Doesn't that sound a little arrogant?
It can sound that way initially, but I think the point Gracián is making is about cultivating deep self-worth and self-sufficiency. Not necessarily dismissing others, but not being dependent on their approval or understanding. He argues this self-reliance is the greatest happiness, even making one resemble the supreme entity, as he puts it. He describes someone truly content alone as, well, more than just human, wise, even godlike in their self-possession.
That's quite the aspiration. It reminds me of that story about Stilpo, the philosopher who lost everything but said, "All my possessions are with me." That captures it, doesn't it?
Perfectly. And Gracián actually uses that exact story, citing Seneca. It's the ultimate illustration of inner wealth. When your real resources are inside your mind, your character external storms have much less power over you.
So Grayson's idea of prudentia wisdom, it's not just about being clever in the world. It's fundamentally rooted in this inner strength built in solitude.
Precisely. Prudentia includes worldly skill, sure, but Gracián insists its foundation is those inner resources. Things like attentiveness, controlling emotions, self-knowledge, all things nurtured through quiet reflection, time spent alone. It's almost like that saying, God helps those who help themselves. Gracián emphasizes the importance of your own effort, your own inner fulfillment first.
And this inner strength also helps in practical situations, like knowing when not to act.
Yes, exactly. He advises waiting, observing in chaotic times, rather than rushing in impulsively. Don't just react. That Ability to pause, to let things unfold, comes from the inner calm and perspective you gain in solitude. You're not just swept along by external events.
Okay, so wrapping up Gracián, solitude isn't about hiding from the world, but about building the inner foundation to engage with it wisely, cultivating self-reliance so you're not easily swayed.
That's it, exactly. In our lives today, constantly juggling relationships and expectations, Gracian's message is incredibly relevant. Solitude is key to maintaining that strong sense of self, that inner resilience we need to navigate it all effectively.
It really is remarkable how these three thinkers, Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, Gracián, they all approached it differently, but they all landed on the vital importance of solitude.
Absolutely. You have Schopenhauer seeing it as the path to inner peace, escaping external noise.
Then Nietzsche seeing it as the necessary struggle for spiritual freedom and creating new values.
And Gracian focusing on the self-sufficiency and wisdom it builds for navigating the world. Different paths, same core value.
And thinking about today, our hyper-connected world, constantly seeing others, being seen, judged, the idea of consciously choosing solitude, making time just for yourself feels more critical than ever.
It really does. It's about shifting how we see it, right?
Yeah, it is.
Not as loneliness, not as running away, but as genuinely valuable time, essential time even. Time for growth, for building inner strength, for understanding who you are, and for figuring out your own values, separate from all the noise.
Well, we truly hope that hearing about Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, and Gracián might help you, our listener, see solitude differently, maybe transform it from something dreaded into, a precious opportunity for your own growth.
Today's SageSync ends here. I will come back next time with another life wisdom. Thank you.
And just a final thought to leave you with. Perhaps this week you could try intentionally carving out even just a small pocket of time for solitude. No phone, no distractions, just sit with yourself and see what comes up. It might just be the start of a really interesting journey.